said it ain't cool if it ain't about drugs, so I broke it down and wrapped it around love. And these songs, we songs for generations on end. The generator pulling my generations on end. And on end, bright as the morning star. 12 doobies like the motherfuckers like this Hanukkah. Couple kicks down my mother's door. Like what the fuck? Only cause we the only ones left in the ghetto since the Holocaust. Calling on God, and I'm always persistent with the blood of a slave, waiting on karma to kick in. And I don't wish that on nobody. Still, somebody gotta pay. Imanu, the Hebrew definition of faith, to be secure, not to believe in what you can't say.
4 times, because I'm just happy to be around people that are like me and concerned about the things that I'm concerned about, because I be feeling alone in this world oftentimes. So by the time I leave y'all today, I'll be back in a world separate from y'all and back to feeling like maybe I'm crazy, but today I'm sane because I'm around y'all. Yeah. So I'm just excited. You should be excited too. So before we get started, I just want to open up with prayer, the prayer of Osiris. So I'll just ask for your undivided attention. And of course, we just asking to be relinked with our spiritual parents. Ease, we looking to make a spiritual sojourn back into the ethers, full of conscious of who and what we are. And of course, my presentation today will go into that. Everyone can make these words out, or does it need to be darker? Darker. It needs to be a little darker. Just get that boom ship, books. Pastor Shil Asara. Look talk other folk min an tutin yai no sat. Anuki templi pata. Anuki li pali ul. Look alak to pali ulat. Look about to pali ulat ama bikum. Anuki bama hoishil nesderu. Pa reishil ba nesderu. Pa mustarashil shil nesderu. Anuki fi pa na washil re. Pa na washil re kalung. Dakuni, Anuki, Hayusi, Nasu, Amun. Now, come on now, we gotta go harder with the Amun. Amun. There we go. Don't let the church beat you like that. Come on. We got it in us. Alright? And first thing I want you to do before I get going, I want you to actually say, I want you to hold your chest right here, your solar plexus. It's your heart center. They call it the heart center because when the planet Earth was on the 90-degree axis, the heart was actually in the center of the chest. It wasn't on the left side. All right? So that's your heart center. And what I want you to do is just say the word amen 5 times. Just say amen. 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 Now I want you to say Ahmun 5 times and feel the resonant frequency. Feel the vibration. Ahmun, 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 Ahmun. Now I want you to say Jesus. Say Jesus 5 times. Don't start winking. I don't want to see that. Take it easy. This is a social experiment. Do not use this as an excuse to start winking out. Say Jesus 5 times. Jesus, 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 Jesus. All right? Now I want you to say Yeshua. Yeshua, 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 Yeshua. Now say God 5 times. Say God. God, 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 God. Now say Allah. 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 So what I'm showing you is that you have parts of your body that they tell you have no designation because of course they're lying to you. So you have tonsils and you have an appendix. And they say you don't really need these things. So you get appendicitis and they say let's just take it out your body, you don't use it anyway. But the reason why you have tonsils and the reason why you have an appendix is because they serve you for vibratory purposes. They have vibratory functions. If you were speaking in tonal languages, you would need your appendix. If you were speaking in tonal languages, you would need your tonsils. You need them for the vibratory clauses that are made up of tonal languages. In fact, you have a ASPM gene, and this ASPM gene corresponds with speaking tonal languages, which causes the brain to actually grow when you speak in tonal languages. So the London Missionary Society de-emphasized the tones in the English language. And this is by no coincidence. A big part of oppressing people is to strip them of their native tongue. And what happened is if you were speaking in tonal languages, your head shape will be a lot different.
Right.
When you see people that speak in tonal languages, their cranium is designed differently because their bones have to make accommodations for the growth in the brain.
That's deep.
So you'll find that the African American sometimes looks a little different from the African, mainly because of the bone structure. And that is just because they're speaking in tonal languages. Like for instance, if we were to try to say the word Quran, we say the word Quran with a K, right? But it should be spelled with a Q, and the Q should sound like, right? It should be coming from the back of your throat. It should be on. That's how it should sound, on, right? Yeah. But of course, in our language, Q and K make the same sound, and so does CH sometimes, right? That's not true. The Q has its own sound separate from the K. So you have words like Michael, right?
Yeah.
But the CH should sound like the het in Hebrew.
Yeah.
So it should be Michael, right?
Yeah.
But instead, it sounds like Michael. So it's been de-emphasized. When I had you guys saying certain words, I want you to just see the difference between the breath of life going in and out. It says in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7 that the Lord God blew his breath into man and man became a living soul. It tells you in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 that the Lord God made man in his image and after his likeness. It tells you in Genesis chapter 5, verse 2 that male and female created he, them, which is a biblical form of jargon that means them all, and blessed them and called their name Adam, making Adam a group of people or a tribe, not one person. But I'm not into the Bible at all. I ain't trying to even put you there. But I can read, right? And so these things are very important because when God makes man a living soul, he makes him a nefesh chayin with 2 yards, which is very, very important and very, very significant. But what I want us to focus on is that if we study the DNA bases, like the adenine, the thymine, the cytosine, if we study these bases, we find out that there's a correspondence between the DNA bases and the piano keys, right? So we know that life is a song. So you have a heartbeat, like beats, right? You have eardrums, like drums you play. Vocal cords, chords get played. In fact, your skin is the biggest organ in the body. Organs get played, organs are instruments, right? And they say it's important that before you die, you leave on a good note, right? So no, there's no coincidence that it's all sounding like it has a correspondence with music, right? And in fact, because your skin is an organ that gets played, the human body is a percussion instrument, which means the way you breathe produces specific tones that correspond with frequencies that can raise consciousness or lower consciousness. Very important information. So being that now we know that the human body is made up of organs, and the only way you can exercise your organs, instruments that you play, see your organs as instruments, because that's what they are. The only way you can exercise your organs or play your organs is through the exercise of breathing. And this is called coherent heart frequency, right? So I wrote a book called Communicating with the Heavens and Its Host via Phase Conjugation and Coherent Heart Frequency, right? Or coherent heart breathing. So you have organs, and the only way you can play your organs is through breathing. Your skin is your largest organ, thus rendering your body, that is the living soul, because God blew his breath into you, right? Your body is a percussion instrument. So you have to learn how to breathe properly so you can play your organs the right way. So it can cause your DNA to go into what's called retrogradation, to loosen its elasticity, so it become a phase conjugating mirror, so light can be refracted or bounce off of it into the cosmos and back onto you, creating consciousness of all levels. This is when we go into the zodiac. And what happens is each planet gives off different gases, and these gases diffuse into the Earth's atmosphere. And when planets are aligned in different combinations, then different gases and different combinations come into the Earth's atmosphere, and it gives us inclinations and different ideas and thoughts. Sometimes it makes us angry, sometimes it makes us want to be intimate, sometimes it makes us introverted, sometimes it makes us introspect, sometimes it makes us extroverted. So, I'm just running down all these different things so it makes sense. I'm just running down all these different things so it makes sense. And trust me, it will make sense. I'm speaking fast, pick up whatever you can pick up. Very important. We used to think this way. If you go into the Bible, they got 2 different words for the word heart. Ancient peoples, right? got different words for the word heart. And what happens is, there's the word id, and there's the word lave. Whenever you see the word lave, they're speaking about the heart that you use to communicate. So, whatever's in your heart's desires, if you see it like that, in that context, they will use the word lave, they won't use id. If they say, it grieved him in his heart, it sounds like, oh, he loved her with all his heart. Any form of communication that takes place by way of the heart, they use the word lave. If they use the word id, which is a Kemetic word or an ancient Egyptian word, a word in the Medu Neter, then they use that in terms of blood being pumped. So they have a heart that literally means heart, and then they have a heart whenever they communicate. That's not by accident. And so we go into the Egyptians where everybody stole a lot of information from. Long story short, we'll debate that later, or you can look at previous debates that I had. And what happens with this heart, according to the Egyptians, and we'll go into that, they said the heart is where the seat of consciousness is. So much so that they will put the heart in a canoptic jar and consecrate its being even after a person passed away. For it was the vessel to which we would facilitate consciousness. But the brain, they would treat the nose like the Nile Valley and pull the brain from the cranium, from out the nose, and disregard it. Then today, in contemporary science, we see that the heart is connected to the brain by way of a thick network of nerves called the vagus nervous system. So the heart is actually connected to the brain. Very interesting stuff. Your heart is connected to your brain by way of nerves called the vagus nervous system. So, one or the other has influenced the other. And it is a known fact that you can be brain dead and still be alive. It is a known fact. If your heart is dead, you are dead. Think about it. True. You can be brain dead and still be alive. But if your heart is dead, you are dead. How about that one? So if being alive runs concurrent with consciousness, and you don't need a brain to necessarily be alive, but you do need a heart to be alive, and the heart takes certain precedence over the brain, then we have to start studying this heart a whole lot more. Now, we know we all drew heart shapes, especially like for Valentine's Day, right? But we know the heart doesn't look like that, does it? But there's an electromagnetic frequency that when the heart contracts in specific ways or collapses upon itself because of specific breathing formations by way of tonality speaking, or when a person literally concentrates on breathing a certain way, that the heart collapses on itself and produces what's called fractal waves. And these fractal waves are recursive, which means it both adds and multiplies at the same time. This is mathematics, we don't need to even deal with that. Just gotta say it for the record. Important part here, the shapes that the heart creates through its electromagnetivity is none other than the heart shape that we draw. So the heart doesn't look like the heart shape, but the electromagnetic frequency or wave that is emitted from those waves that are recursive actually forms the shape of the actual heart that we've been drawing the whole time. Now, how did they know that? They didn't have the technology that we have today. That frequency is called the Mandelbrot set. It's called the Mandelbrot. If you look up the word Mandelbrot, it is the shape of the heart via electromagnetic waves that the heart creates when it collapses on itself by way of coherent heart breathing. Now, that we said all those things, why is that heart so very important? Well, whenever the heart creates the Mandelbrot set, here we go again. A person's cognitive abilities are more stimulated than when the Mandelbrot set isn't created. So now we're going to, how do we create these fractal waves? Well, we can create it through speaking in tones, not in tongues, but in tones. This is very important. So now we're going to learn how to speak in tones. And when we say tones, we mean having a depth in language. Meaning, you can say Jesus, you can say Yeshua. You see suicide bombers who all about that. They with the shits. This is what we say in the hood. The Muslims are with the shits. And what we mean by that in the hood, that they're with the shits, it's like they'll bang in the name of Allah. You feel me? Now, African Americans who love Jesus, yo, what's so far with that? Now, the black woman can even sound like she having a love affair with Jesus. You can say, hey, Mom, what's up? Can I get you enough? Oh, no, Jesus is enough for me. She having a whole affair with this man. But she ain't strapping no bomb to herself in the name of Jesus. But I contend that it is the language of the scriptures, something taking place within the confines of the language that gives people an affinity to the narrative, whether it is true or false. So you see, everybody seems to be way more effective than the black man and the black woman here, who practices the same religion. We practice everybody's religion, but everybody is more effective in these religions than we are as a community. But we are not too concerned with learning the languages all. But we see the other communities, they make it a linguistic imperative that they have to know how to speak those languages. They have to do their recitations. They have to do their praise. And thus, it captivates them more. And so what they've learned in the African American world is that we have to teach the preachers how to exegete. That is to say, we have to teach them how to enforce tonal dispositions in words where they have already been de-emphasized or vacated. All this merely means is we have to put some juice into Jesus. We have to make Jesus now sound like Jesus. Ha! That's what we got to do. Because we're missing the other H's, because Hebrew has several H's, sounds. And Arabic has several K sounds. But English only has one and a bunch of letters that are just very tricky. Like we have sugar with no H in there. And then yell at the children, oh man, you can't read. Look how old you are, you can't read yet. So, we finally get our children to say the word sugar knowing there's no H there. So now we get them to say sunny, and then, oh, I ain't stupid. You know what our daughters do? Oh, that's sunny, daddy. And like, why you say sunny? Because you made me say sugar. And sugar didn't have an H there. So my daughter's like, I'm not slow. Sunny is sunny. It's sunny outside as far as I'm concerned. So we don't know why these things are happening and why the inconsistencies in this language. But the goal was to de-emphasize it, because when you emphasize by way of tones, you get captivated when people speak. So you will hear Yeshua, you will hear Allah. Then we get Jesus and God. One syllable word, God. There's nothing going on. There's no activation. Nothing's being stimulated. So then the church has to do what? We have to play music now. We gotta do whatever we can, because this language is de-emphasized. We won't be able to just sing in the word. You can sing any part of a surah out of the Quran. You could, because the way the language is designed, you can make your own tones. You can't do that with just English. English, we have to do very unique things to rhyme. Very unique things, right? It takes a lot of strategy, right? So, that being the case, in order to captivate us into a new paradigm of spirituality, music has to be played, dancing has to take place, exegeting and throwing in tones and words where those tones don't exist in this language. They have to do a combination of things to captivate us into spirituality. With spirituality, true spirituality needs no captivation. It's already captivated. You don't have to add something to the equation to motivate us into connecting with our Creator. All of this was very important. And I won't go through all the slides because of our time constraint. And the way I am, I'm very meticulous. Certain things got to be said if I'm going to say certain things. So just bear with me, because it's all a story right here. It's all connected. But this is important. For us to get to where we got to go, we have to do what's called an ethnological comparative study and syntactic analysis. And by ethnological study, we are looking to study the people and the culture. Very important. Then we're going to undergo some kind of philology. And the philology is to understand if the language contradicts the narrative. That's what I use philology for. So like if a person says, Allah gave us the Quran, in this perfect language, Arabic. And then we look in the Quran and we see French words. Philology will help us determine, oh man, there's a French word there. Or we'll see a word like Isa, and we'll know that that's not an Arabic word. It's Greek, actually. You feel me? So philology helps us see that there's nobody called Isis or Horus, right? Because we learned that when the Greeks came in, they added an S to everything. So Usir, they added an S to Usir, and it became Usiris, which became Osiris. They added an S to Hor, and Hor became Horus. They added an S to Ast, which became Astis. And then we know in Proto-Semitic languages that were grafted out of the Medu Neter that the A, E, I, or U are all synonymous. They're interchangeable. They're recognized by the same letter. So your Isis can be Asis depending on the vernacular or the popular jargon or verbiage of that community. So we have to do an ethnological comparative study and syntactic analysis. And the reason why we put comparative there is not enough just to know what you know from one study. We got to go through the land masses. And we got to see what this landmass is doing in contrast to that landmass. And then see if anything runs concurrent so we can tell if there's any migrations. Like they would have you believe that the Egyptians are dead, and they died and they disappeared. But when you study, for instance, this book, The Origin of the Word Amen, Ancient Knowledge, The Bible is Never Told, by Jackie Issa, PhD, very good brother, and Salim Faraji, PhD. Through their ethnological study and archaeological tasks, they found that a lot of the culture of the ancient Egyptians, on account to the colonizations and everything was taking place, if you go 1,000 years forward from the decline, you'll see that they wind up in Ghana. Because when you look at the names of these people in Ghana, they got uncommon in their last names. And it's not a coincidence, but you have to do an ethnological comparative study. You have to study the people and the culture, and then see linguistics within them all to see if we're talking about the same people. They keep making us think that when we get colonized, we die, disappear. And then when they colonize those people over there, that's just a separate group of people. And they died and colonized over there. Like African Americans in 100 years would probably had died. Okay, they would give birth to a new race right there before everyone's eyes. Once you disconnect the people's posterity from the information, they can rewrite history. So the point of this is to let you know that you are the very people that you've been studying. Just got to say that in short. You are the very people that you've been studying. They're quick to tell you, you think you're a damn Egyptian. You ain't no Egyptian. That's right. You know what I'm talking about. We do. Ain't that funny? We all know what we're talking about. But nonetheless, read. Nonetheless, I thought we was gonna see something in here today. They told me it's gonna pop out. But nonetheless, what we have to focus on is the fact that people migrate. Like, what do roaches do? Right. When they know the big homie is here with the Bigfoot, looking to put pain in and step on everybody. They get out of there. And when the guy comes in and says, you know what, I'm going to destroy all the rodents that you have in this house, he doesn't necessarily kill all the rodents. The rodents migrate. They go on an exodus into somebody else's crib and terrorize them. You know what I'm saying? Run up in their walls. You feel me? They don't just disappear. So whenever a colonizer comes around, the people get out of there. And then they have to go through what's called an acculturation process. That is to say, they have to adopt foreign ideas because they are foreign to that community. While in every effort trying to maintain or salvage where they have their inception culturally. And then it becomes this cultural diffusion that takes place, and it becomes obscure if the records are not kept properly over who these people are over time, right? So I just want to put all those things into context. ethnological comparative study and syntactic analysis. And by syntactic analysis, we have to understand that when we see words and we see terms, they may not mean immediately what we suppose they would mean through our interpretation or translations. That's very important. So, what this means is, if somebody not from here heard me say, you know what time it is. Someone who's foreign may be like, oh, like you're late, 6:15, right? That's called syntax. You have to be in the culture to understand what I am saying to him. If you're not in the culture, you're going to take what I say literally. And so you will actually beseech somebody 4 o'clock to find out what time it is to assist me, when in fact, this is a closed communication I'm having with him. Because we inside of our culture doing what we do. We lost that when we got enslaved. And we had to pick up someone else's ideas, which we still trying to figure out into this very day. Very important information. The way we see the world is a gravitation out of a dysfunctional mind. So whenever someone tries to reintroduce you to who and what you are in conflict and you are at loss. And you may even think something is wrong with this information here. Because you suffer from cultural shock. Every time someone re-invites you to who and what you are, you suffer from cultural shock. Having been displaced and being an African of the diaspora here in America. So these things have to be put into proper perspective for it all to make sense. So now, the next part of everything that we will have to understand, we may not go through some of these things for today, but I'll definitely continue with some, maybe tomorrow. But we got the eschatological corpus of the Remetu. This is what the Egyptians would have called themselves. Of course, we know Egypt is a Greek word, right? The eschatological corpus of the Remetu is a narrative of the quantum world, the tiny world. We say as above, so below. But the Egyptians said as below, so above. They said that the tiny world dictates to the bigger world. The bigger world is all illusion. It's tiny things that go undetected that's actually calling all the shots for the big things that we see. And that whatever you see up there obviously can run concurrent, or we can run a parallel between that up there and down here. Right? So, familiarity with the nomenclature of bacterial genetics and proteins. Very important. We need to have or establish a familiarity with the nomenclature of bacterial genetics. And nomenclature is a fancy word for the vocabulary, but it's a specific vocabulary, a vocabulary that is specific to bacteria. Not just any old bacteria, but bacterial genetics. Why bacterial genetics? That genetics we're talking about is us. The genes that make us very important information. We have a viral ancestry. That means human beings have their inception from a virus. I know that they told us about the ammonia and the methane in the water and the ultraviolet rays colliding to give birth to the prototype of the first cell called the amoeba, or the protozoa, the first-in-time animal, which then developed organelles to now have a locomotive called the amoeba, and then one cell divided became another cell, and then they break down the meiosis and the mitosis. They give us all that. All of that is dope. All of that is dope. All of that is dope. But you still needed an electrical conduit to bring the cell to life, which would give you the carbonator or the black diamond, which they say instigated life, which is an extraterrestrial. By extraterrestrial, we don't mean sentient beings with eyes, noses, and lips, though they can exist, and I believe they do somewhere. But in this particular case, an extraterrestrial could be anything that comes from outside, extra additional. Terra, that's on Earth, Latin for Earth, terra, from the stars, astral. So anything additional that comes to Earth. So a meteor, right, was an asteroid. That asteroid comes into the planet, gets broken down to become a meteor. The meteor is now extraterrestrial. Scientifically, it's an accurate way to stipulate it, right? Ultraviolet rays from the sun is extraterrestrial because it's an additional component into Earth or on Earth from the stars. Okay, so when I say extraterrestrial, the black diamond, it's because there's bacteria that can thrive under amazing conditions that came into the planet that instigated life. And they call it a phage lambda, which will run concurrent with who we call Useer or Osiris. You will have to see some of these books or previous lectures that I had, because I'm moving forward into something, but every lecture has to be a combination or a continuation from the previous. So it all makes sense when you watch it in a chronology. So we call it phage lambda. So we have to understand bacterial genetics and the nomenclature of the same, which is the specific vocabulary that caters to the dynamics of our genetics as relates to bacteria. And proteins, very important. We have to understand proteins, because if we understand proteins, when someone tells you about your story, you would know, oh, we talking about Horus and Set, or we talking about Hor, and we talking about Set, or Satuk. Now we say, what are you saying? If we know bacterial genetics and someone told you about the Horus and Set story, you would be like, say a word. Set is the C1 protein, and Horus is the crow protein, and they are fighting for a place to establish the native seat. And when one wins, it is physical existence. When the other one wins, it is cosmogonical existence. Now this is nerd talk. And chicken, and that's not even the protein we need to be eating. So, it gets deep. And what I mean by this is, we can learn about Jesus, and how he died on the cross, and he was dead for 3 days, and then he resurrected. We heard the story, but then we can turn around and we can do this. We start studying not astrology but astronomy, and we realize that there's a crux constellation or a cross constellation, and on December 22nd, December 23rd, and December 24th, it appears that the sun is on decline, son of man. It appears that the sun is on decline where? During the crux constellation, on the crux constellation. So there's a system of stars that form a cross. And on December 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, the sun that is inside of the cross constellation, the crux constellation, crux means cross. The sun that's on the crux constellation or the cross constellation, the sun on the cross appears to be going downward December 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. And this is called the winter solstice, right? And this is where it appears Saturn or Satan actually is higher than the sun. And then on December 25th, it appears that the sun actually resurrects because it goes 1 degree up on the cross for the first time. This happens every single year. But the narrative has anthropomorphized and personified events that take place on planet Earth and in the stars. And we have this affinity because of the ego and miscommunication and deception to hang on to actual physical people that represent the anthropomorphization of the same. So, if we study astronomy and we are familiar with the Christian narrative, then we know the Christian narrative when we hear it and when we see it. Because if you know the Christian narrative, and then you're in astronomy class, and then you see that the sun is on the cross, and it appears to be dying for 3 days, son of man, dead for 3 days, died on the cross, raises up 1 day, 1 degree, December 25th, we celebrate his birthday, and we won't see the change until Easter, where there's more sunlight than there is darkness. And then we look at the Eastern Star. And then we look at the 3 wise men, which would be Anilam, Anitak, and Mentaka. That is in alignment with Khufu, Khafre, and Menku-Are. Those are the pyramids in Giza. Right? So Anitak, Anilam, and Mentaka would be the belt of Orion, or the 3 wise men, when they are in alignment with what? The Eastern Star. Or the star in the East. What we talking about is Sirius. Or we talking about are set now. So now we got the Virgin, or we got Virgo, which is the Virgin, and we see what? That the constellation is holding a loaf of bread, and then we start making sense out of this. And this happens during the Piscean era, and Pisces represents the fish, right? And then every time we see Jesus or something, some nigga got a fish on the back of his car, we ask him why the fish is there. He don't know, but we know that this nigga multiplied this shit to 5,000 people. He fed 5,000 people with 2 fish. But we see this fish somewhere. This is what we see. But my point is not to chastise religious people. My point is, if you're familiar with astronomy, and you see the Virgo constellation, and you learn about Anitak, Anilam, and Mentaka, the belt of Orion, then you know when you're thinking about the 3 wise men and the sign they was looking for from the Eastern Star. Then you understand the death of the Son of Man for 3 days, and when he resurrects, then you understand why we celebrate December 25th. Because if you know about astronomy and you are well versed in Christianity, if you should come across the part of the narrative that represents the anthropomorphosis and personification of the same, you'll be able to connect the dots and say, oh, this is what they was talking about. They was deep, but damn, now they got us worshiping the people. That was an expression so we could assimilate the data better, because the data sounded like it looked like us. It's a good way to educate people, so we could have taught children. So when we create these people in religion, we're creating them so we can teach complex information to children. It's not that we're trying to actually worship these people. Children can understand the Jesus story. So we explain it like that in our ancient cultures, because they can connect.
Right.
Yeah, and then he died on the cross and everything. Boom. Now when it's time for science class later on, well, okay, the gig is up. The cross is actually a constellation. The Son of Man didn't die for 3 days. The Son appears to be dying for 3 days on the cross constellation. So Easter, no, that's just the day you get your sneakers. Listen, you know what I'm saying? Like, we have to really start keeping this stuff real. So it's an astrological account of what's taking place. So we talking about familiarity with the nomenclature of bacterial genetics and proteins. If we establish a familiarity with the nomenclature of bacterial genetics and proteins, when we hear alchemetic stories, we will know that they're talking about things that transpire within the confines of our DNA. And you'll be blown away by it. You'll be like, wow, this is an account of what's going on in our DNA. When proteins fold and proteins go to war, two in particular, C1 and Crow proteins, C1 being Set and Crow being Horus, where they fight to get to the native seat. And when Horus finally gets to the native seat, you have lived because you have died. And what does this mean? That 98%, some say 97, 98% of your DNA, let's go for 97. 97% of your DNA is said to be junk DNA. They say nothing can be done with it. Well, we understand 3% though. They then say when you die, the 97% appears to be active. So you're only experiencing 3% of life in your death. And you're experiencing 97% of your death in your life. Now this sounds all oxymoronish, right? But 97% of your DNA doesn't become activated until you die. 3% of your DNA is all we can account for in our life. Wow. Because when Crow makes it to the native seat is just a place where the proteins want to be when the fold takes place. Protein folding is just a terminology you got to learn when you study proteins. Protein folding in the DNA. You got proteins that's constantly at war with each other between the left side of the DNA and the right side of the DNA. One is always trying to conquer the other. The left side of the DNA is trying to conquer the right side of the DNA, or the left leg is trying to conquer the right leg. When Crow wins in what they call death, which precipitates our life. When Set wins when you come into this world. Henceforth, people say things like this, and Set, of course, would be C1. People say things like this: I believe in life after death. And if you believe in life after death, you have announced this as the arrival of the morgue. If you believe in life after death, that means you're dead right now. And you're waiting to finally live. Okay? You don't say, I believe in life after life. You can say, I believe in life after death. So you believe in life after death. We're the walking dead right now, waiting to come into our awakening, which was the goal of the Remetu or the Egyptians, because they have what's called the Peret Emhuru. And we'll talk about the actual translation of the Peret Emhuru that they call the Book of the Dead, which is a mistranslation. And they tell you it's a mistranslation on page 2 of the Book of the Dead. That's just what they felt like calling it. Okay? So the Peret Emhuru means the procession into the awakening of consciousness. How do we know that? Because Heru means it represents what? Heru is represented by the sun at dawn. And things wake up at dawn. You see, we had ideographic and pictographic designations for the words and the letters that we use. So when you see Peta and Heru, and Heru is a form of a phase of the sun, well, also considered a person, but we know the person thing is not really what it's about. It's about education when we making them people. Heru's represented as the sun coming up in dawn. And what happens in dawn? Can't be death. Would you use the sun at dawn as a representation for death? Or would you use it as a representation for the awakening? Now, if we were wrong about this, the purpose of the Peta and Heru is to become User. And User means awakening. So the purpose of the Book of the Dead is to become Osiris. And Osiris, whose name is User, means ancestor or means awakening. So the purpose of us having a Book of the Dead and eschatological text, which really is the Peta and Heru, which means a ritual procession, which means a group of people going into a ritual-like state in order that they may become more conscious or awake. Benin had a conscious community. Egypt had a conscious community. In fact, the conscious community wasn't here. Everybody was aspiring to become part of the conscious community, life hereafter. There's no such thing as a conscious community on planet Earth. If we go to our ancestors' text, they was trying to get into the conscious community, so they spent a great deal of their time getting what? You see the bayonet, the wings, that before you walk into any temple, if you know the symbol of the Bentley or the symbol of a Chrysler, they got those wings out there, come from Egypt. It's called the bayonet symbol. And the bayonet means what? You can't go into any temple ran by any Nasu or Nasu Bit, any king. You can't go to any temple unless you follow the mantra. That symbol's above every temple, and it means, man, know thyself. You can't walk into a temple and think you're going to speak to the king if you don't have knowledge of self. This is all our lingo. That's why it's still in the DNA. We say things like, oh, we look for knowledge of self. Oh yeah, I'm conscious. Oh, that just means I'm woke, I'm awake. We've been saying this. They done stripped us of our language. We can't even read or write the meta next. But we say the same things that we said thousands of years ago. Ashe. You feel me? We saying the same things. Yeah, I'm woke. Yeah, I'm conscious. Yo, I'm just seeking knowledge of self. You can't talk to me, you ain't got no knowledge of self. But that's how we rolled back then. Now before you walked in, instead of the doormat, that little slick stuff we be having on the floor before you walk in, it was just on top. Same people though. You can't come talk to me. I'm presuming if you come talk to me, you got knowledge of self. If I around get killed trying to talk to me, you ain't got no knowledge of self. That was the mentality. Come here, had no, because I'm gonna have to run through. Biosemiotics is just signs and symbols that correspond with things that affect us or impress us conscious-wise, biologically. So, our cells communicate on an image-to-image level sometimes. They may call it SOS signals. When there's a breakage in the cell breaks up, and then multiple bacteria or germs start being created, and it spills out the cell. Then, your body creates rope-like structures from the multiplication of different organisms, because it's all trying to break out the phage lambda so it can become a Heru as far as consciousness is concerned, because that's who you are in essence. All of this is tricky stuff. But my point is, because we're going to go into what that SOS signal is, right? The point is, because it's symbolic of Noah's Ark, because that boat is created on a biological scale, and the two of every animal, you'll see the same thing on a bacterial level taking place, but this is towards your ritual procession into the awakening. But the point in case is this: signs, signals. If something breaks up into two, it is a form of communication. Sometimes your cells will divide into two to communicate with other cells. Yo, it's popping. It's on now. That's the cue. They may not talk, but they still communicate through signs and symbols. When bacteria or microbial biology stipulates that all the microorganisms communicate, but not through the verbiage that we're familiar with, but through signs and symbols. And in that's called biosymbiotics, right? So it's very important. So it's the way microorganisms communicate with each other through events and circumstances that they create around themselves. So when this happens over here, offset baby girl here, from the time she was born, my baby girl here, from the time she was born, to know to be weaned by her mother, it was pre-encoded. It's happened so many times. The algorithm of thought has transmigrated. It's transgenerational behavior. It is dumped into your DNA, the stuff they call it junk, because what's dumped into it is consciousness, so it's not tangible, they can't touch it.
Right.
But it's something there.
Right.
But it only becomes active in your death, because it's consciousness. Yeah. So consciousness is dumped into your DNA, and now they call it epigenetics. They actually got a name for it, so I don't have to sound like I'm being all metaphysical, and you can't look it up. It's called epigenetics. So your memories are actually dumped into DNA. And if the behavior is pretty consistent, then what will happen is upon stimulus, it will invoke something, maybe even provoke something in you to rise to whom what you really are. So through adversity, which we learn in Kemet, where they say, man, they had multiple gods. No. They were defining multiple circumstances in time. The very important information before we start going through all of this. What do we mean by that? The Remetu, the ancient Egyptians did not believe in multiple gods. They believed in multiple forms of adversity that provoked consciousness. And they encapsulated the idea with personages of people, and they maybe even use animals. What does this mean? Well, I said earlier, I don't know how talented black people really are. The best of the best in sports, music, and entertainment have horror stories before they got there.
Damn.
Adversity drove them to greatness. In Kemet, we have so many different designations for who and what we are. So many that we realize we're all born with the same amount of potential, relatively. But it is the circumstances that surround us that cause some of us to respond to it based on what we can tap into, and others of us don't believe, so we just simply fail. So you have Sachmet, which means power. She's deitess of power. So power can be invoked, but how is it invoked? You don't really know how to pray until you completely lost it all. We just gotta keep it real. We be in here trying to pray. It just don't feel like it's right.
Right.
But let you lose a family member.
Come on now.
Let you lose your house or your car. Let you lose your woman.
Come on.
Nigga be praying. Hey. It come out. It resonates. We be feeling it in the household. Yeah, we gotta take this brother out. So the prayer isn't really authenticated unless you struggle.
Yes, sir.
You feel me? So I don't chastise our brothers and sisters in the church, because they all do something very powerful. Right. It's just this white man has manipulated us so much, he took out some of the most important pieces of the spirituality. But it's the adversity that makes you pray in ways that the communication, the universe has to respond back to you. That's the coherent heart breathing. You be needed. You know when children cry because you're about to whip them, or because you have whipped them, they coherently heart breathe. They do the regular cry, but if it's intense, because you put the word game down with the murder game, they be like, and then you be like, damn, I think I beat this nigga too hard. Breathe. And you about to beat them to breathe because you scared you might have killed them. If I killed you, I'm gonna whip your ass. Breathe. So they start really, they get into that zone. They be in that space you can't take them from, where they know, oh, the beating's about to come down.
Right.
And then they too wish they were not in that situation. And they create something that impacts the parent, where when you look at them, you're no longer looking at them, you're looking into them, and you start thinking to yourself, damn, why did my child fear me like this?
Right.
You come back to your humanity. Because something resonated from them that impacted you that made you say, I gotta stop this.
Right.
Because I ain't really trying to put them in shock.
Right.
And something ain't right with my child not breathing at this particular point.
Goddamn.
So you just fall back. You're like, this is going too far. So it's the same thing with prayer. So we realized that these wasn't different gods, it's all consciousness. Because again, if I were to show you an empty bottle, if this was an empty bottle, is the space inside the bottle separate and different from the space outside the bottle? Can we pour space out of this cup? Or is it just one space? Just one space. The space inside of a bottle is no different from the space outside of the bottle. We cannot pour space out of a cup. So now I gotta ask, is consciousness beholden to an exclusive group of people? Or is consciousness just is?
Right.
Maybe we got better vessels to facilitate consciousness, like vehicles. Nonetheless, consciousness, no one has a monopoly on it. Just like the space in a bottle versus the space outside the bottle itself creates the illusion that it's separate and different. And depending on the bottle, it might be a nice, attractive, owl-shaped bottle. Might be a regular bottle. Might be a tall bottle, short bottle, but the space is still the same. It just appears to be somewhere different. So we broke up the faculties of consciousness as designations for when we're provoked, how to arise to the occasion. Not gods, just consciousness. That was very important to break down because we all are endowed with this consciousness, and when we are subject to stark circumstances based on the type that we were subject to, causes us to invoke higher being that pre-existed us in order to come out of it, because it's everybody's right to experience this existence and go through several different faculties of consciousness to be whole, because consciousness is trying to understand itself. And when consciousness realized it was aware, or when awareness realized it was aware, it collided and materialized. Now everything is working in an effort, in a conspiracy from consciousness to interface with itself. And if we take it on that level, then we don't get caught up with all the God games. Then we understand. Then we understand what? There we go again. The jellyfish ain't got no brain. But it's alive, and its function is to go around consuming the microorganisms that would make the water too dangerous for us to eat.
Bring it home.
Everything is conspiring to advance human life. So we can exist long enough. And if we were to destroy this whole planet, there's bacteria called spores. Spores create a shield around the bacteria. What the spores do, they dump one DNA outside the planet, and it makes a copy of DNA. One outside of itself, one inside of itself, and creates a shell around itself. You know, the planet goes on fire, or goes to extreme cold. Billions of years later, if the conditions are right. When the conditions are right, that bacteria has a clock set to open up that shell and dump the DNA that is saved. So this thing can start all over again. I don't make this stuff up. It's bacterial genetics. So everything's in a conspiracy to keep us alive. But why? You feel me? Why? So this stuff gets deeper and deeper and deeper. Bees account for 10% of the oxygen that we breathe. And because of all the wireless signals and systems and Wi-Fi, they're having problems navigating back into their beehives. So they're dying. It's called colony collapse disorder. But bees account for 10% of the oxygen we breathe. Very important for us. And guess what? The venom made from bees destroys cancer and AIDS. Look it up.
Let's get it.
So now it appears Monsanto or whoever those people are, they have funded a company that by chance are destroying the bees. But just look it up though. Make sure I'm not tripping. I don't make these things up, it's just flowing. I would put it in here, it's just coming through. But it's real. The venom in bees destroys cancer cells. True studies. Don't look for no pseudo stuff. Look for medical journals and everything. Just type it in medical journal, PDF. Look for that stuff and type in keywords. Bee, venom, AIDS, cancer, and you'll see. But you see, look at this. We just look at a bee like, man, bee is insignificant, I'm man. No. What is man? Man is everything, right? Not one thing. Man is every single thing. The bird is man. Right. And what the bird does to life on the ground and carries germs, one, that helps seed the planet Earth as it travels from one place to the next. But how do the birds know how to get by? It's not through their eyes. The birds know how to get by through the dunes and the valleys and the mountains because they see through electromagnetivity. And the dunes and the valleys create curves where they know how to travel and go from one place to the next. They don't be seeing with no eyes. Yeah. The rivers, all of that changes the algorithm and it knows how to weave through. It's not even using eyes to go back and forth. You feel what I'm saying?
It's deep. That's crazy.
Like this thing gets deep.
Yeah.
And it's all about advancing in consciousness. Because consciousness is just trying to interface with itself, figure this thing out. If you were consciousness, you would create all sorts of organisms and then realize I gotta create some more organisms to create some more organisms just to preserve the organism in question to really figure this design out. And that's why when you're dealing with a demon, I don't like to make up fictional characters, but it's a good word for now. When you're dealing with a being that will make plants rape each other. Right. And you're like, plant rape? Yes. A plant in South America should not be cross-pollinated with a plant in Europe for the few plants that they have over there. That's plant rape. They call it cross-pollination. It's interesting. But this is why you have all sorts of allergies right now. Because these are hybrids. They shouldn't be here. Right. Like, if they don't have legs to walk, they say, how you doing? One sexy plant. Like, we ain't never see a rose go to a tulip and say, you got any condoms? We ain't never seen that. Right. Because plants don't walk around. No. Not even in the little shop of Howard. Plants don't walk around. So, if plants don't walk around, in order for a plant 1,000 miles away to make another plant with a plant that was 1,000 miles away, someone with a freaky mind had to say, I would like to see these two plants get it in. I wonder what would happen if I put these two plants together. But you see, you may not see it that way, but in the world of genetics, they understand this is called sex. This is sex. And they got this thing with sex where, like, they get off creating murder. Like, murder is sexual for beasts on planet Earth. They get off sexual. Like, whatever it is that you like to do on planet Earth, if you had great sex, you get a similar feeling when you're doing something that you really enjoy on planet Earth. There's some people on planet Earth really enjoy killing. They get off when people die. It's a fact. They get off when people die. They get aroused. And then they make eunuchs out of the people that they killed. All throughout history, they cut off the penises of the people that they killed. Now, who wants to lift up a bunch of penises after you done bodied everybody? Who does that?
Crazy part.
Reptilian in nature? Maybe.
Like, who does that? Oh, they dead. Time to chop the penises. Like, who does that? Who thinks like that?
Nobody that's jealous of the size of your penis.
That's what I'm saying. Right. Now, you ain't gonna elongate your penis by detaching my dick onto yours. Right? We gotta be more serious here. African archetypal conception is the question. What was the original way we used to think? How did we originally think? And how did we get to this point today? When they took your language, which you talked about earlier, when they stripped you of your native tongue, they had to give you a new one, and with that new tongue comes new ideas, new perspectives, newly found appreciations, and newly found deceptions. So, this is not an African fable, this is not an African nursery rhyme. Or we have rockabye baby on the treetop, when the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the buff breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come baby, cradle and all. Now, who the hell will put their baby on the tree and watch the wind blow? And the name of the game is, baby gotta fall for this game to be successful. Now, if a black man created this song, child services would be at his front door. But think about this. We're singing to children, rock-a-bye baby, on the treetop. This is murderous. That's something you should see in the Purge. How could a parent sing to their child, one day I intend to put you on top of a high tree and watch the wind blow in hopes that you fall? I seen a scary movie where the grandparents put the child in the oven. Said, can you go check inside the oven for me? And then close the oven in there. Saw that movie. Same thing. So, as a child reciting these songs, imagine what it does to the subconscious mind.
Right.
If you've been trained to sing a song where your babies can be put on a treetop for you to wait for the wind to blow, so the cradle can rock. Down come by baby, cradle and all. It's a crazy idea. So let's go ahead. I'm just showing you, like black people are not crazy for no reason.
Right.
This ain't just happening. This is psychological warfare. So we got Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. And we asked, why the E-I-E-I-O? Well, we studied Roman numerals and we studied the English language. We know A, B, C, D, E is 5. I equals 1. So 5 plus 1 is 6.
Right.
E-I equals 6.
Right.
E-I equals 6. O is the 15th letter in the English alphabet, which is 15, so 1 plus 5 is what? 6. So E-I-E-I-O is 6, 6, 6.
Okay.
So now, we here thinking it's just a game. We here thinking, okay, Rock-a-bye Baby may be an accident. But we also were singing Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. And I mean, no, why ask? Why the letter E and I and O? Like, who cares? But subconsciously, your brain already deciphered this, unbeknown to us. This is all psychology. Facts. If somebody already played around with Roman numerals and decoded, okay, this letter equals this and this number equals that, it's already in your DNA.
Right.
Subconsciousness. Okay? And if you got an interpretation of 666 being something wicked or evil, and this is in your brain, subconsciously, you're going to be afflicted.
Let's get it.
So Old MacDonald had form E-I-E-I-O is 6, 6, 6. E-I-5-1, E-I-5-1, O 15th letter, 1-5-6-6-6. Then they tell you it's 24 hours in a day. If there's 24 hours in a day, how much hours is in the night?
Right.
This ain't us talking. And then they tell you 60 minutes in an hour and 60 seconds in a minute. So 2 plus 4 is 6, 6 plus 0 is 6, 6 plus 0 is 6. But that's not it. How you gonna start off with seconds instead of firsts?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know our ancestors had firsts, seconds, and before first they had moments.
That's crazy.
And everything was in groups of 10, not 6s.
Hell no.
All right, you think you know it.
So, this is interesting. We had 360 days in our calendar and 5-day festival. Shed Fest. But we'll do this. We'll play these games. How you have seconds before you have first? Because he's telling you he came after you. His time is based on when he comes after you. So his time is based on seconds because he wasn't here first.
Boy, shame.
I say that.
That's crazy. That's a boy.
Bars. I love teaching the hood, man. How that college age y'all know, the hood be like bars. You know, college students sometimes be like, yo, get it. I'm doing this shit. I'm like, I'm going back to the hood.
Come on, man.
So, I'll be looking at police brutality. Because remember, we talking about how we got to this point. I won't get to go through this whole thing because of the time. But I knew I was going to start cooking. This is important information here. Police brutality, being choked out. You know, subconsciously, because we all believe in God. And we all been told about miracles. But we don't need no brother named Polite to make you question those miracles. Like, people pray all the time. They do this. They do this, just make sure they don't McDonald's. So, people pray, they say, man, help me through these hard times, please. Or we say, as I walk through the valley, the shadow of death. We say all those things, right?
Yes, sir.
But if you miss it, 2 months of your rent, why you just don't ask God, God, can I get 2 months rent? Like, you know, we doing all the times and everything. We waded in the water, we doing all of that. But yo, we behind 2 months rent. Why are we afraid to say, God, I need 10 stacks?
Right.
Because if we don't get it, we'll question if God even exists. So we put ourselves in a space where we're like, just don't ask God for the shit you really need. That's what we do. Just to be safe. They don't want to question his own God. No, you know your rent need to be paid, but you be like, God, please just bring me better times.
Yeah, right.
Your woman leave you. You don't really want to pray about, please give her back to me. Because she don't come back. Then you have to question your God. How come God ain't do that? Well, God got a special plan. That's what they say.
It don't work out.
He got a special plan. So then, you know, a brother like Polite be like, let's put it to task. He got a special plan? This when it get ugly. And forgive me. Because I don't mean to be rude and disrespectful. I want to show you our perspective of spirituality and how it wouldn't contradict our spirituality versus the one they gave us. Keeps us in a space where we're afraid to say things and ask things because their doctrine it implicates us spiritually. It's an impractical form of worship that they gave us. So it puts gray areas on spirituality. We're afraid to ask for what we really need. But not in our Kemetic science. So I'm not doing this to antagonize people. I'm showing people the way we thought and addressed our issues and our connectivity to the cosmos was totally different. So we are talking about the African archetype of conception versus the European theological system of deception. That's what we're talking about here. So we going on with this God thing. And you know, I just say to myself, okay, God has a special plan. Let's put it to task. It got to be right all the time. It can't be right some of the time. So, a car crashes. I had some stuff that I want to go in. I'm going to see if I can bring that tomorrow. This was good stuff, man. Damn. I need this stuff. Don't even look at it. Ah, that was dope. Ah, that was dope. That was crazy. Look, I got to finish this point. All right, damn. All right, let's do this. So, we have this symbol here, very important. When you look up the word usir, see now I'm going to have to do some work. When you look up this word usir, I just got to do it. I'm going to be going back and forth now. When you look up the word usir, it's very interesting. These are the ways that you can write usir. But this is the way that you write Set, or Isis, his wife. The one that they compared to Mary and Jesus and Gabriel, or the Holy Spirit, the Trinity, right? So, we look here, and this is very interesting because Osiris means to awaken, but the only letter difference really that you have to factor in between Isis, the wife of Usir, and Usir himself is this I. And this I is in her name in retrospect to Usir. This I means to do or to make. We are talking about the ancient African archetype of conception. What does this mean? Well, what does Isis name mean, or Ast, or Aset name mean? Aset's name means throne. Think about that. Not the man. The woman's name means throne. Osiris' name, who's killed, means to awaken. Now, how are we going to get into consciousness? Because we have to become a Usir, but how do we become a Usir? The woman has to make him conscious. Watch how that works. You can't spell ISIS without you can't spell ISIS without making Osiris conscious. I'm gonna say it again. This is Osiris' name. But the distinction amongst Osiris' name and Set's name is when you add the to do or to make. Osiris' name means to awaken. The I means to do or to make. Isis' name means throne by itself. You can use this glyph alone, and this can be Set, which means throne. But someone has to occupy the throne. A man is going to occupy the throne. But he can't occupy the throne unless he's conscious. And it's her job to make him Usir, or awaken. This is how we thought. This is how we thought. It is only because a conscious man can occupy it. So the woman's job is to make her man conscious. This is not about clinging to the idea of an Osiris, clinging to the idea of a physical Set. This is about the understanding of the way we communicate it through images. Okay? So now, we're going to go back here. And we're going to look at this situation here. We don't see us in front of each other. We see us next to each other. Very important information. Why is this very important? Because if we learn that God made man first, and then he used a portion out of man to make the woman, we got something very tricky going on here in the conversation. And it's going to create complexes. Now maybe he did this. Maybe he did. But what I'm saying is, when you get information like that, it's going to create motives and agendas. And we can just call it outright. Chauvinism and misogyny. Now it can be true, and if it's true, we just hold that. But I'm saying that's not our African philosophy. That is not our African conception. So we're going to go back here, and we're going to see this. Okay, this is coming out of my brother's book here, Assad and Motep, right? And we see here that when we're looking at the roles in ancient Kemet, we'll see that male, son, or female, Osiris and Isis are brother and sister. We know this. They're considered to be brother and sister in the text, right? But then that's also tricky. When you say they husband and wife and they're brother and sister all at the same time, we get confused about that. We say, what does that mean? It represents spirit of, or the spirit of God moved across the face of the deep. Face of the deep was translated as waters, from waters, amoya, right? So, the water part is Nun. That's the deep abyss. The darkness, okay, and void is Kek and Kikek. And the spirit of God, or the hidden power, or that which you can't see, is Amun and Amunet. So you got Nununet. It's how we think. We didn't disrespect our mothers. So people say, how you say the black woman is God, and your mother left you and you only knew her for 1 week in your life and she died when you were 17? Because apparently the DNA still existed in me and I was able to contextualize this thing properly. She still brought me in. And then later on I found out she could have died giving birth to me, and everybody said to have brought me, including my father. But she ran off to have me and then turned me over to my father and ran into the military after. Got sick, got cancer. By the time I became 17, finally met her. She died the week I met her. But I didn't know all of that. But whether I did or I didn't, guess what? She brought me into this world. She was the divine medium that brought me here. And it'd be treasonous for me to say anything incomparable about my mother. Just like it'd be treasonous if you said anything incomparable about your mother. It doesn't matter if she was on crack. Doesn't matter if she was shaking her ass in the damn club. Don't matter if she prostituted herself before the whole world. Before the hood, my nigga, she made you. Straight off the bat, she made you. What else you need? She's validated. She brought you here. Now you have the right to indemnify her for any shortcomings she ever made through your greatness. You can take the heat off of her. You can hold yourself accountable. She made you, she brought you here. You have purpose.
Well, do you see a difference? Like Jesus, like Buddha.
Picture perfect, I paint a perfect picture. Hieroglyphics gonna hit ya. I be scribing, peep the image. Black shoes, black crew, black science, I'm splendid. Photons, neutrons, energies descending. Yahshua or Jesus was black like Kendrick, like protons, positive ions I'm spitting. You got the sentence when you got indicted. I mean in doctrine, the cops is steady hawking. They doing their job, we the stock that they watching. That stocks and bonds, fam, they not gonna stop this. So we gotta get right, physically and mentally, we gotta get light. I'm on the grind, I'm sent to be a dude with 100 ways to heal you, that's a centipede. We gotta get right, but don't move at a center speed. That's basketball and football. We gotta make moves, the Christ is gonna hit y'all. That's light like what's shining off your window. Insight is no hype, we all kinfolk. The kinky hair and melanin is instrumental.
It's over now, it's over now. Somebody said it's going down. Save us now. Like Jesus, like Buddha. And we can't seem to maintain, but we all on the same team, looking up at the man. Well, do you see a difference? Like Jesus, like